instability, tachycardia, hypertension, like sympathetic nervous system increase, dilated pupil, heavy sweating, fever, neuromuscular abnormality, tight rigidity, and twitching, seizure. For those who are interested to read more about SS, this is the link on that. Okay, so any drug that can increase serotonin can do that, okay? Remember that. So some of the selective serotonin reuptake, I missed the rea on this one, inhibitors are very famous is daily conversation, Prozac, Celexa, I think I lose mine, that's fine. Zoloft, these are all very well known now. And so I'm going to just talk about 4 of them and just point out some of the specifics for your interest. So Celexa, treatment for depression, and then you can read this. As Dr. Emmett mentioned, that this drug is metabolized by multiple CYP. And so because of it is metabolized by multiple CYPs, so if you have other drugs or other conditions that can inhibit a particular CYP, it does not affect this guy metabolism, because other CYP enzymes can take over in degrading it. So because of that, drug-drug interaction is not a major concern. It is not, itself does not induce or inhibit CYP, and other inducer or inhibitor of CYP doesn't affect it because it's compensated by other CYPs. So adverse effects is common to all SSRIs like this, but specific to this guy is the QT prolongation, so we need to know that. Prozac, the very famous Prozac, it is approved to treat depression, but also is a lot of obsessive compulsive behavior. Bulimia nervosa is people who has a compulsive eating disorder and then purge themselves afterward. Panic disorder, so Prozac are useful for that. And also, Dr. Emmett has mentioned that the Prozac and its active metabolite has a very long half-life, 1 to 2 weeks. He mentioned about 10 days, okay? So this is unique because the other SSRIs, their half-life is about 1 day, it's 20 hours or 1 day. So this guy is unique, and therefore the withdrawal symptoms are not as problematic, because even if you stop it today, it takes some days before the concentration in blood is decreased. Contraindications is important that this guy, Prozac, can increase of these drug levels by inhibiting CYP2D6. And because both of these guys can prolong QTC, so it's something to pay attention to. Adverse effects, just like all SSRIs, you have all these adverse effects, but specific to Prozac is anorexia, so something to know. Next SSRIs is Zoloft. Again, it is approved for depressive disorder, but a lot of obsessive compulsive panic, PTSD, etc. So social anxiety disorder. So it is approved for all this. Again, this is this drug is also metabolized by many CYPs. So drug-drug interaction relating to CYP is not a big concern. Paxil, I mentioned that within the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, they are typically free of interactions with many other receptors. Paxil, or paroxetine, is one of the rare exceptions because this guy has more anticholinergic effects, so be mindful of that. So it has all these standard anticholinergic side effects. And also, Dr. Emmett had mentioned that this compound itself, when it's degraded, when it's modified by CYP2D6, it can actually produce a metabolite that kills the CYP enzyme. Okay, so the more you use it, then it's less likely, because then you kill this enzyme. Then it cannot be efficiently modified and gotten rid of. And also, it can affect other drugs that require 2D6 to help for metabolized. Okay, so next go to another class of drugs. These are called mixed serotonin compounds. There are 3 of them. So the first 2, trazodone and nefazodone, they are called 5-HT2 antagonists with SSRI activity. So SSRI, we want to increase the level of 5-HT in the synapse. But this guy is actually blocking the 5-HT2 antagonist. So it's like partially fighting against what you want to do. So therefore, this compound's efficacy is lower than your pure SSRI. And it also affects alpha adrenergic and histamine receptors. So this compound is not very good as an anti-depression drug. This drug is mainly prescribed for its sedation effect or low dose for insomnia. So this is not mainly used for depression. I bet it can also be used for depression, but mainly is for sedation and insomnia. It has also been approved for priapism or persistent and painful erection of penis. Nefazodone is rarely used now because of liver toxicity. And then vilazodone, it is an SSRI, but again is a 5-HT partial agonist. So it's like partially fighting against the serotonin effect, so it's not as popular as SSRI purely. The next class is only one drug that does not involve serotonin. It's a norepinephrine dopamine reuptake inhibitors. The single drug is bupropion. So it inhibits the uptake of dopamine, as Dr. Emmett already mentioned, much better than norepinephrine and even better than 5-HT. So it can also may actually reverse the transporter's function. The transporter's function is take the monoamines from outside the cell and into the cell, right, so that they can be reused. There are evidence in the animal. It can actually reverse that transporter. It can actually secrete dopamine or norepinephrine from inside the cell to outside the cell. So it becomes, for both actions, would allow the amount of dopamine and norepinephrine in the synapse to increase. So it's used for depression. Typically it's an adjunctive, so something else to it, because we still want the 5-HT effects. So you probably use a 5-HT compound and then add this guy to it. Smoke cessation, and later on, maybe later this week, we'll talk about ADHD. So this is another drug that will be used for ADHD. At high enough concentration, seizure is a concern. This drug, because it does not affect the 5-HT system, so weight gain or sexual dysfunction is not a major concern for this drug. So this is a unique feature of the NDRIs. Okay, we'll talk about the last class. Is the mirtazapine. It's only one drug. So this drug, the main action is on the presynaptic alpha-2 receptor. Okay, and this figure doesn't show it. So by blocking that, it will block the alpha-2 adrenergic receptors function. And this receptor's function is to inhibit the release of norepinephrine or 5-HT. By blocking that, you can actually increase the release of norepinephrine and 5-HT into the synapse. But, so it also, by blocking the 5-HT2 receptor lower anxiety, but it also would affect the cholinergic receptor, would affect the histamine receptor, so it has all these adverse effects. It can cause weight gain. So you can always turn lemon into lemonade, right? So it would increase weight gain. So some of the patients who have weight loss, then you can use this drug for it. So the last compound that I'm going to talk about is not used as an antidepressant, because on Wednesday, after the depression topic is done, you would learn about the bipolar disease. And then most of the bipolar disease drugs are actually used for other purposes, and you have learned them, except this guy. So I want to mention that. Lithium is used in a bipolar disease, and then some of the drugs named are here. They are lithium in brain, but we have no idea what it does, okay? Lithium has been used for a long time to treat the manic phase of the bipolar illness, the manic depression illness. And then this is the only mood stabilizer with clinical data proving that it can reduce suicide rate in bipolar patients. That's the only drug, so that's why it's being used. Mechanisms of actions are known. There are all these hypotheses, and we have no idea which one is relevant. And then pharmacokinetics is completely GI absorption, slow passage through blood-brain barrier, blah, blah, blah. So it's secreted in urine without much change. So digress to get off subject a little bit. You know that when Coca-Cola was first marketed, they used extract from coca leaf, right, which contains cocaine. They put it in that, and we all love it. You know, lithium was also put in soft drinks when the soft drink first came up. You know that? In the 1930s and 1940s, for about 20 years, lithium was added to 7-Up. So it's calmed you down. So, of course, after 1948 or something, that it was stopped. I wonder why. Okay, so these are some of the adverse effects. I would not ask you to memorize the adverse effects, but I just want you to know that it's used to treat the manic phase of bipolar disease. So know this figure, because that summarizes all the major drugs that we talk about, where they work and how they work. Questions? Very good. Dr. Cohen, when do you want to start?